Okay, let's just see if live. Going to wait a second or two. Just see if the sound is working. Okay, so today I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Trump administration's proposal. Hasn't really been outlined yet, but after his meeting with President Sisi, there's speculation that he might designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. Now, I'm not sure what the practical implications of this are, but the almost universal reaction among the commentariat and the big-brained, the galaxy-brained punditry class is an indication of why this would be a good idea. There are already tons of stories out quoting these rocket scientists explaining why designating a group that is the font of every single, without exception, every single Sunni jihadist network and organization in modern times, i.e., the 20th century onward, the Muslim Brotherhood is the kind of the root of every single Sunni jihadist group, from the most prominent, i.e., ISIS, Al Qaeda / ISIS, and Hamas, which actually has control of a political entity. So the Islamic State, there is an Islamic State that's still around and it controls the Gaza Strip. And the group that controls it is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, or rather, the Palestinian version of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's not even an offshoot. But these experts are saying that designating this group, which fostered every single Sunni jihadist group that exists today, and these groups are responsible for killing tens of thousands of human beings. Designating them as a terrorist group is a bad idea. And you have the stories quoting the experts. One of the experts quoted is Shadi, aptly named Shadi Hamid, who's the author of Islamic Exceptionalism. And Islam is exceptional in one regard. The Quran is not exceptional in the fact that it was plagiarized. The Book of Mormon, 70% of it was plagiarized from the KJV. It's not exceptional in the fact that it endorses polygamy and sex slavery. There are cults that prescribe those horrific crimes as part of their doctrine. It's not exceptional in denying Jesus or being a works-based salvation. That's almost every other gospel except for the gospel of Christ. The only regard in which it's exceptional is violence, and this was mentioned by Pope Benedict in his Regensburg speech, where he quoted a previous pope who accurately said name something innovative. I'm paraphrasing here, but name something innovative that Islam has come up with, and the only thing you'll see is violence. And it's true. The only exceptional part about Islam and unique aspect of his doctrine is its fundamental, the fundamental basis on which it is erected, which is violence and coercion. That's the only thing unique at all about Islam. So this guy, Shadi Hamid, wrote Islamic Exceptionalism, and he's a Brookings Institute. He works for Brookings. And lots of people like him, and there was someone on the BBC as well, an analyst, who unknowingly hit the nail on the head. And I think a lot of these people are, with not by design, but they're unintentionally excuse me, hiccups. But they're unintentionally hitting the nail on the head when they say that this will impugn America's Islamic community, because this gets to the heart of something that the media has tried repeatedly to brainwash the public. The media, academia, all of the pro-Islamic, pro-Islam bulwarks in our society, Hollywood, they've all tried to brainwash people into believing that Islam, and especially the American variant of Islam, is somehow this peaceful, docile religion, in spite of the numerous jihadist attacks on American soil, from members of al-Shabaab in Minnesota to the Fort Hood attack, to the Post nightclub massacre, to the San Bernardino massacre, to the 2 World Trade Center plots, the second one being the successful September 11th massacres, to the John Allen Mohammed and Lee Malvo sniper shootings in Washington, D.C. And I could just go on and on listing dozens and dozens of jihadist attacks in the United States by people who subscribe to Islam. But they want you to believe that the American version of Islam in general, but especially the American version of Islam, is this very peaceful, very pacific, normal religion, and that Muslims are being unfairly persecuted. But it's hard to reconcile that with their denunciation of the prospect that the Muslim Brotherhood is going to be named a terrorist organization. Because why would they be concerned if Islam in America was such a peaceful variant or so benign? Why would they be concerned that Trump is designating the root of every single Sunni terrorist jihadist network, designating them as a terrorist group? Why would they be concerned? Why would American Muslims be concerned about being associated with terrorists if they're so benevolent? Well, if Islam here is so benign, and they admit, and this is kind of where the veil falls away, no pun intended. They admit that, yes, this would stigmatize all sorts of quote unquote charitable giving, what Muslims deem zakat, all sorts of charitable giving, and would potentially open up all sorts of Muslim philanthropic organizations to prosecution, just like the Holy Land Foundation was the largest Muslim philanthropic organization in the United States, and it was raising money for jihadists and jihad, and it was rolled up, and it went out of business after the Justice Department went after them in the wake of 9/11. And that's you can't unless you want to operate under just a haze of cognitive dissonance perpetually, you can't reconcile these two things: the idea that Islam, especially in America, is peaceful and fully integrated, and the idea that you can't designate a terrorist group as a terrorist group because you stigmatize all American Muslims. Those two things are those two ideas are mutually incompatible. But this is what they're trying to do, and it just reinforces the idea that the people are being lied to. I don't think most Americans are believing the lie, but that notwithstanding that fact, that's not stopping the powers that be from trying to continue to brainwash people into believing that Islam is a peaceful religion, and that there's something different about American Islam versus foreign Islam. Now, it's true there are a lot more secular, quote unquote, Muslims in the United States, but the thing is, these people are not following Islam. If they followed Islam, they would believe in the same things that Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and Ayman al-Zawahiri and the people in the Muslim Brotherhood, Mohammed Morsi, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, they would believe the same things that those people believe. And the fact that the media is trying to sell you this patently ridiculous idea, which has two mutually conflicting components: the concept of a peaceful Islam, and if you designate a terrorist group as a terrorist group, that will stigmatize American Muslims. The Muslim Brotherhood was started by Hassan al-Banna, and it was the ideas of the Muslim Brotherhood, of their specific interpretation of jihad, was popularized by Sayyid Qutb in books like Milestones and In the Shade of Quran. And these are very well-written books. I mean, this is a bit of an aside, but if you read these books, these are actually would be very persuasive if you, especially to people who don't understand that Islam is a completely false gospel, don't understand how Muhammad was a false prophet, and it's very evident. But even for someone who understands those concepts, these are very well-written books and very effective in communicating jihadist ideology. But Qutb took what Hassan al-Banna has started and popularized it, and he was ultimately executed by the Egyptian government because of his ideas. And it's not because these ideas were peaceful ideas. These were ideas that formed the basis for contemporary jihad. And Sayyid Qutb, I think his brother, I believe, was a teacher at Osama bin Laden's university. So the Muslim Brotherhood is the incubator for Al-Qaeda. The Muslim Brotherhood is the reason we no longer have the Twin Towers. It's the reason we don't have the Bamiyan Buddha statues and any other historic relic or piece of art or culture that falls within the domain of the caliphate. And the Muslim Brotherhood is also the reason why countries have basically turned into fortresses, because we have mass immigration from Muslim countries and mass immigration from people who have imbibed these ideas, even if they've never read any of Qutb's works. They've still ingested these ideas from people like Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who's living in semi-exile and is the current thought leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. He's the modern equivalent of Qutb or Hassan al-Banna. And Hassan al-Banna's one of his descendants is Tariq Ramadan, the Islamist rapist who raped numerous women in France, is still in prison as far as I know, and is being prosecuted, and justified these rapes using Islamic teaching. And whether or not you reject this idea, it's simply incontrovertible that the Quran and Muslim teaching justifies rape, especially of non-Muslim women, which is why you see things like the rape attacks in Cologne and the grooming gangs in the UK. And it's just a simple inescapable fact. So the idea that the Muslim Brotherhood should be nurtured as some sort of non-violent alternative. First of all, it is violent, it's very violent, and its adherents are extremely violent. And secondly, even if it were non-violent, quote unquote, their goal is to impose Sharia over the entire globe. So in other words, they are predicated on the idea that coercion is a fundamental principle to their doctrine. So the idea that the Muslim Brotherhood is something benign or that stigmatized that we shouldn't designate it as a terrorist group because we stigmatize Muslims is patently absurd. And one of the most ridiculous, and this was kind of entertaining in a very darkly comic way, the fact that one of the articles bashing Trump for even considering this, not even designating them as such, one of the articles quoted Jamil Khashoggi, who is the media's favorite jihadist. This is a guy who was not only best friends with Osama bin Laden, interviewed him, but also supported the goals of Osama bin Laden, i.e., polygamy and sex slavery and Sharia and murdering and crushing infidels and kafir, quote unquote. This is a guy that subscribed to everything that Osama bin Laden believed in, and he was murdered by the Saudi government because he posed a threat to Mohammed bin Salman, the current ruler of Saudi Arabia. And I don't know if you remember the details of this story, but they're very grisly. He was killed and then dismembered. And the only reason we know about it is because Turkey was spying. Turkey, which is run by Erdogan and the AK party, which is a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, they were spying on the Saudi embassy. And that's how we found out about this. But Jamil Khashoggi, before he was murdered, was not some liberal reformer or there are many, especially women who come here from Saudi Arabia who are legitimate exiles. He was not a legitimate dissident or an exile. The only disagreement he had with the Saudi regime was that he wanted them to get on board with the Muslim Brotherhood. So he was actually worse than the people in charge of a regime that murders people for being witches and murders atheists and persecutes Christians. But my point is the fact that they had to resort to quoting Jamil Khashoggi shows you how intellectually bankrupt these people are and why you should never believe anything the media says. Trump is right, they lie. And this is a perfect example.